Welcome to the Senior Techie Podcast. Imagine being handed a glowing, completely flat piece of glass and being told that your only way to see recent photos of your grandchildren is to just tap it.
Right.
But there's this unspoken fear kind of lingering in the back of your mind. Like if you tap it the wrong way, you might accidentally delete your bank account or, call a stranger in another country or just completely break the machine.
Oh, absolutely. It's terrifying.
It is. And that is exactly what being handed a new smartphone feels like for an absolute beginner. So if you are a senior listening to this right now or a caregiver trying to help someone you love navigate the digital world, we want to set the record straight immediately.
Yes, please.
You spent decades mastering a world of mechanical dials and heavy clutches and really satisfying physical buttons. The fact that this glass slab gives you zero physical feedback, well, that's a massive design challenge for your muscle memory. It is not a failure of your cognitive ability. You haven't been left behind.
We really, really need to put that in bold letters. I mean, the friction you feel is a byproduct of modern design, not a lack of intelligence.
Exactly.
Today, we're exploring a very specific scenario that honestly plays out in millions of households. We're looking at a hypothetical beginner. Let's call her Mary.
Okay, Mary.
So she is 80 years old. She lives alone, and she has just been gifted a smartphone by her family. Our mission today is to figure out the precise steps to get Mary past that very real terror of this new device and, straight to the joy of what it can actually offer her.
Which in this case means confidently opening photos of her family.
Exactly.
Before we jump into the curriculum for Mary, though, I want to linger on that physical design challenge you mentioned. Because, frankly, the hardware itself is inherently intimidating.
It really is.
The tech industry uses this invisible jargon built right into the device. They throw around terms like interface or touchscreen as if everyone just inherently knows what that means.
Right, like it's second nature.
Yeah, but let's ground this. Imagine walking into your kitchen to make dinner. But instead of seeing your stove, your sink, and your refrigerator, you walk in and find nothing but a completely blank, flat, black counter.
Oh, wow, that would be paralyzing. I mean, your brain relies on visual and spatial cues to know how to interact with the room. Without them, you're just stuck.
Right. But then, imagine you discover it's actually a magical kitchen counter. The moment you decide you need to boil water, the outline of a stove suddenly illuminates right on the surface.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
And when you finish and need to wash a pot, the stove disappears, and a sink materializes in its place. That is the fundamental concept of a smartphone interface.
That's a great way to put it.
It's a blank piece of glass that magically transforms into whatever tool you need, a camera, a telephone, photo album. But the catch is, unlike your actual physical kitchen, you cannot feel the knobs or the faucet.
Which is exactly the core of the intimidation factor. Someone like Mary has spent 80 years relying on tactile feedback. When you push a button on a blender, you feel it click. When you turn the steering wheel of a car, you feel the resistance. A touchscreen just removes all of that mechanical confirmation.
Yeah. Pressing a touchscreen requires a totally different physical approach than, say, pushing a heavy typewriter key. It's a gentle, brief tap.
Right.
I always compared it to testing a hot clothing iron with your finger to see if it's warmed up yet. You don't push your finger into the iron, You just lightly tap it and pull away.
Yes, exactly.
But because the screen is a featureless piece of glass, making that first tap feels like a massive leap of faith.
And taking that leap of faith requires an environment of total safety. So let's look at Mary's reality. The phone was dropped off by her well-meaning daughter on, say, a Sunday afternoon.
Right.
Now it's Tuesday. The phone is sitting on Mary's coffee table, completely untouched, feeling basically like a ticking time bomb.
Oh, I can picture it perfectly.
And the default advice people give the daughter in this situation is, tell your mom to call a helpline or call you if she gets stuck.
I have to say, that advice is completely absurd.
It really is.
Giving someone a piece of advanced technology and casually saying, hey, call me if you have an issue, is like dropping a manual transmission car in someone's driveway, tossing them the keys and walking away.
Yes.
If that person has only ever ridden a bicycle, they don't even know what a clutch is. How are they supposed to call you and explain that they're stalling out in third gear?
Yeah.
They just don't have the vocabulary.
The vocabulary barrier is massive. Mary cannot call a helpline because she literally does not know how to describe what is happening on the screen.
Right.
If someone asks her to click the hamburger menu, it sounds like absolute nonsense. Asking her to diagnose her own technical roadblock is like asking her to describe a color she has never seen before.
Wow, yeah.
The burden of seeking help cannot be placed on the beginner.
So the daughter has to own the first move. What does that actually look like? Because, a rushed follow-up visit where the daughter stands in the doorway firing off rapid instructions while holding her coat, that's going to do way more harm than good.
Absolutely. The most effective first step isn't a visit at all. It is a phone call. And the critical detail here is that the daughter must call Mary on her landline.
Bypassing the smartphone entirely.
Yes.
Using a technology Mary already trusts implicitly. That's smart.
Exactly. The daughter calls the landline and delivers a very specific script. She says, "Mom, I want you to be able to see the new pictures of the kids. I am going to find someone to sit with you and help you learn the phone. You don't have to do anything yet."
I am struck by how powerful that last sentence is.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything yet.
It's everything.
It instantly diffuses that ticking time bomb on the coffee table.
Mwah.
Mary probably exhales a breath she didn't even realize she was holding. She knows she hasn't been abandoned, and the expectation of mastering this glowing rectangle alone has been completely removed.
It provides immense psychological relief. The golden rule of senior tech adoption isn't actually about the hardware. It's about eliminating the fear of breaking it and eliminating the fear of failing. Now, the daughter has successfully relieved the immediate pressure, but she still has to do the legwork to find the right guide.
Okay, wait, let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Sure.
How does a daughter living, 2 towns over actually find a tech guide for her mother? My instinct says she should call a local senior center.
Yeah.
But doesn't that usually just lead to an endless automated phone tree? Like, is a senior center really a reliable pipeline for this?
It absolutely is, provided you know who to ask for.
Okay.
Many senior centers employ dedicated activities coordinators or social workers whose specific job is to actively reach out to isolated older adults. They frequently maintain networks of vetted volunteers or run structured digital literacy programs.
That makes sense.
But if the senior center feels like a dead end, there are other hidden infrastructures in the community.
Like what?
Well, Mary's Church, or faith community, is a prime example. Many congregations have outreach committees specifically dedicated to assisting older members, which brings a built-in layer of trust to the interaction.
Right, they already know her.
Exactly. But perhaps the most overlooked resource is Mary's primary care doctor's office.
Wait, the doctor's office. I need you to walk me through that mechanism because tech support is the absolute last thing I associate with a medical clinic.
I know, it sounds weird at first, but it makes perfect sense when you look at the big picture of geriatric health. Social workers and geriatric nurses at primary care practices evaluate a senior's holistic independence. Today, medical professionals view social isolation as a severe health crisis, and digital connectivity is increasingly recognized as a medical marker for fighting that isolation.
Wow, so the doctor treats connectivity as preventative medicine.
Exactly. Because of this, clinic social workers are deeply plugged into local aging resources and can often point families directly toward vetted local tech assistance programs.
That is brilliant. And I want to make sure we mention the elder care locator here too.
Yes, definitely.
The resources we frequently point to on the Senior Techie include this phenomenal free national service. You can call them at 1-800-677-1116. No matter what zip code Mary lives in, they connect families with local agencies on aging anywhere in the United States.
It is a vital tool, but whoever the daughter calls, whether it's the senior center, a church, or the local agency, how she asks for help is just as important as who she asks.
She needs to be highly specific.
Yeah.
Right? She can't just call and say, hey, my mom needs some help with her iPhone.
Specificity prevents a disastrous mismatch. The daughter needs to be crystal clear. She should say, my mother is 80 years old, she lives alone, she has never touched a smartphone in her life, and she has zero tech vocabulary. We need someone who is incredibly patient and has experience with true beginners.
Stating zero tech vocabulary up front is key. It stops the volunteer coordinator from sending over someone who just assumes Mary knows what an app or a home screen is.
Yeah.
Which brings up a really important point about who the right helper actually is. Families usually default to sending over a grandchild, because they grew up with the technology. But my theory is that a teenager is actually the worst possible choice.
Your theory is 100% correct. A teenager whose brain has been wired for swiping and scrolling since they were toddlers is going to move at light speed.
They really do.
They will grab the phone out of Mary's hand to, quote-unquote, fix it quickly without explaining what they did. The ideal helper must have the patience to sit entirely unhurried for at least 30 minutes.
Yeah.
They also need to understand that Mary, forgetting everything they discussed between Tuesday and Thursday, is completely normal.
Absolutely. And I want to add a strict rule for this ideal helper. They must permanently delete the word just from their vocabulary.
Oh, that is a fascinating boundary. Why the word just?
Well, think about the context. Someone says, oh, Mary, you just swipe down from the top right corner to get to your control center. Or you just click this little gear icon.
Right, I hear that all the time.
When you use the word just with a complete beginner, it completely invalidates the legitimate steepness of their learning curve. It implies that the action is so wildly simple that any fool could do it.
Ouch, yeah.
And when Mary inevitably struggles to perform that quote-unquote simple action, she instantly feels foolish and embarrassed. And that embarrassment shuts down the entire learning process.
It completely minimizes the challenge. A good teacher uses plain, descriptive language and avoids assumptions of simplicity. Now, community organizations are wonderful, but sometimes the absolute best teacher isn't a vetted volunteer from an agency.
Really?
Sometimes the ultimate guide is the person living right down the hall from Mary.
You're talking about peer mentors.
Yes. If Mary lives in a senior apartment complex, a retirement community, or even just a tight-knit neighborhood, there is a very high probability that another resident nearby is already navigating a smartphone.
Okay, I'm going to push back on this quite a bit.
But-
Are we really saying that a 78-year-old neighbor who maybe only knows how to text, check the weather, and look at photos is a better teacher than a true tech expert who knows every shortcut and can troubleshoot any software glitch? That seems totally backwards.
It seems counterintuitive until you factor in the psychology of learning. When a true tech expert sits down with Mary, there is an immediate, intimidating power dynamic.
Wow.
The experience gap is so wide that it creates performance anxiety. Mary becomes hyper-aware of how little she knows, but when a 78-year-old neighbor sits down, that dynamic vanishes.
Because they share the exact same baseline of life experience.
Precisely. The neighbor can look Mary in the eye and say, let me tell you, I was absolutely terrified of this piece of glass too. I cried the first week my son gave it to me.
Oh, wow.
When the neighbor says that, Mary believes her. The fear is instantly cut in half through shared vulnerability. The neighbor remembers exactly what it feels like to not know how to tack the screen, which breeds genuine patience.
And the environment of that visit changes completely, too. It stops feeling like a sterile, high-pressure classroom. It looks like two women having a cup of decaf at the kitchen table, chatting about the neighborhood where the smartphone is just casually resting on the tablecloth.
Exactly.
The best learning happens when it doesn't feel like a formal lesson at all.
And, the activities director at a senior living community usually knows exactly who these patient phone people are. A quick call to the front desk can often facilitate this connection.
Okay, let's put this into practice. We have found the unicorn. The patient neighbor from down the hall comes over for the very first session. They sit down at Mary's kitchen table. What is the actual curriculum for day one? My instinct says they should immediately open the settings app and increase the font size, but I feel like you're going to tell me that's a terrible idea.
It would be a terrible idea. During the very first visit, there is zero instruction, not a single lesson.
So they just stare at the phone.
They don't even try to operate it. Mary needs to feel physically safe with the device before her brain can absorb any information. The neighbor comes over, they chat, and the neighbor pulls up a photo of Mary's grandchildren that the daughter sent over previously.
Okay.
The neighbor then simply hands the illuminated phone to Mary.
And Mary doesn't swipe, tap, or navigate. She just holds it.
She just holds the physical device in her hands, looks at the photo, and hands it back. That is the entire goal of the first visit.
It sounds almost too simple, but if we look at the underlying mechanism, what this does for Mary mentally is profound. It establishes a critical baseline reality. She held the device, and nothing exploded.
Exactly. Proving the device is physically safe to handle is the foundation of everything that follows.
Yep.
Only after that trust is established do we move to week 2.
Right.
During the second visit, the helper introduces one single physical action. Not a sequence, not a menu navigation, just one action.
This goes back to our hot clothing iron analogy from earlier. Just one gentle tap.
The helper points to a specific spot on the screen, maybe the icon to open a photo, and says, tap that spot with your finger. Mary taps it. A photo opens, she taps it again, and the photo closes.
And they just repeat that single action.
They repeat it until the physical tension leaves Mary's shoulders. They do it until she actually starts laughing because she realizes how remarkably simple and safe the action actually is.
The psychological shift in that moment is incredible. In the span of a few taps, Mary transitions from being a passive, fearful observer of an alien technology into an active commander.
Yes, exactly.
She purposefully pressed a piece of glass and commanded a supercomputer to do exactly what she wanted. She is finally in control.
It is a massive victory. However, the reality of adult learning means that the moment the neighbor leaves the apartment, the memory of that interaction will begin to fade.
Oh, sure.
By tomorrow morning, Mary might look at the screen and completely forget which colored circle she is supposed to tap.
Which, again, is a completely normal part of building new muscle memory. So how do we make this learning stick without Mary descending into a spiral of frustration every time she is alone?
This is where I introduce the most crucial tool in the entire onboarding process, the refrigerator card.
Oh, I love this concept.
Okay.
Let's break down exactly how to create it.
Once Mary has successfully accomplished her goal of opening a photo, the helper takes a physical index card and writes down the steps. The formatting is non-negotiable. It must be written in large, bold print with a thick marker. Most importantly, it must be written entirely in Mary's vocabulary using absolutely zero technical jargon.
So the card does not say, wake device, unlock home screen, launch photos application, select shared album.
Never. The card is a custom map of exactly what Mary sees with her own eyes. It should read something like, to see pictures of the kids, 1, press the round button on the bottom. 2, tap the colorful flower picture. 3, tap your daughter's name.
I love that.
It is entirely literal.
I want to pause here and speak directly to you, the listener. If you are learning a new device, or if you are the one writing out this card for your parent, relying on a physical piece of paper taped to a refrigerator for weeks is not a failure.
Not at all.
It is not a sign of cognitive decline. It is exactly right.
The card is the necessary bridge. It provides the solid ground between needing constant supervision and achieving total independence. Every single time Mary wants to see a photo, she walks over to the fridge, reads her custom card, and follows her own personalized instructions without needing to ask anyone for help.
Over time, the muscle memory just takes over. The taps become second nature, and eventually she won't even need to glance at the card. It is all about empowering the user on their own terms, giving them the safety nets they need to succeed. And speaking of safety nets, we always want to ensure our community at the Senior Techie is protected. As you or your loved ones venture further into the digital world, if you ever suspect that someone is targeting an older adult through their smartphone with a scam or a malicious link, you can report it directly to the Federal Trade Commission at reportfraud.ftc.gov. And don't forget the Elder Care Locator website at eldercare.acl.gov either.
Having those protective resources on hand is vital. If we pull all of these threads together, the core insight of our discussion today is clear. True digital literacy for seniors doesn't actually begin with the device.
Right.
It begins with empathy. It starts by taking the burden of initiation off the beginner, neutralizing the fear of failure, and taking the time to translate complex, invisible hardware into plain, everyday reality.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We spend so much time marveling at the complexity of microchips and high-definition touchscreens and wireless networks, but isn't it fascinating that to truly unlock the power of the most advanced digital technology in the world for an entire generation, the ultimate key is actually the oldest technology we possess: a physical piece of paper and a pen taped to a refrigerator.
It really is beautiful.
This podcast was brought to you by The Senior Techie. It's available on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. If you'd like to receive their free newsletters, you can subscribe at subscribe.theseniortechie.com.